Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to realize they were planning your downfall all along? Have you ever felt like you're going crazy, like you're being too sensitive, too emotional, just because someone you love is slowly manipulating your reality? This is not just a story about a gender reveal gone wrong. It's a story about betrayal, emotional abuse, gaslighting, and the quiet strength of a woman who was pushed to the edge but chose to rise instead of break. If you've ever been lied to, emotionally isolated, or made to feel too much, this story will show you how to recognize the red flags of manipulation, why staying silent isn't strength but speaking out is, and how even in your most broken moment, you can take back your power. This story might shake you, it might feel familiar, but it will absolutely remind you. You are not weak, you are not alone, and you are never beyond a comeback. Watch till the end, because one woman's darkest moment might just be your survival blueprint. Pink or blue powder was waiting in immaculate white tubes like little promises of happiness ready to burst across our immaculately tended backyard when the confetti cannons were loaded. The features of everyone I cared about most in this world were bathed in a warm glow as fairy lights twinkled against the evening sky. 47 people, including family members who had traveled long distances to be here, coworkers and college pals, had come to share in this moment with us. With the camera ready to record what I thought would be the most romantic moment of my life, the photographer I had hired squatted behind the rose bushes. When Jeffrey refused to look me in the eyes, I should have realized something was up. I felt the first tinge of unease as I stood there in my flowing white pregnancy dress, which I had spent 3 hours buying for because I wanted to seem radiant, shining, and worthy of this lovely life that was developing inside of me. Beside me, my 3-year husband's jaw was fixed in that hard line I'd been seeing more and more of lately. Tonight, however, was meant to be different. We were meant to have tonight. Are you prepared, my love? I reached for his hand and whispered. He withdrew. As we approached the cannons, the audience fell silent. With her phone already recording, my mother grinned from the front row. Beside her, Jeffrey's parents sat stiffly, their smiles too sardonic, too shrewd. I should have recognized that outfit, the same one they had worn when they muttered about how quickly things were moving during our wedding. Jeffrey said, "I have something else to share before we find out whether we're having a son or daughter," his voice echoing across the yard with well-practiced ease. Anticipation made my heart skip a beat. Would he finally express his excitement to everyone at this point? I had been bearing the burden of his quiet, his detachment, and the fact that he had begun working late every night for weeks. Perhaps, however, this was his way of compensating. Perhaps. He took a manila envelope out of his jacket pocket, not for a present, not for a speech on a piece of crumpled paper. With a cold, calculating smile, he handed it to me, and the world tipped sideways. "Susan, congratulations. I'm enjoying my independence while you're having a baby." In my shaking hands, the packet felt like 1,000 pounds. Confusion echoed through the gathering around us. A phone rang and fell to the floor. With a quick click, the photographer's camera captured every terrifying moment of my world collapsing. "What, Jeffrey?" My voice broke, barely audible. He said the words, "divorce papers," loud enough for everyone to hear. I reasoned that because we were already bringing everyone together for important announcements, why not accomplish 2 goals at once? The ensuing hush was deafening. The nighttime wind seems to pause its breath as well. His sneer widened as he fed off my embarrassment like some kind of emotional vampire, and I stared at the envelope, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. Not now, not in front of everyone. The logical side of my brain whispered, "This is calculated. This isn't impulsive. This is cruel." "I don't understand," I said, scarcely raising my voice above a whisper. "Yes, you do." Jeffrey's voice was crisp and honey-sweet. "Susan, you're intelligent. I take it you've always been the smart one? You can figure it out, I'm sure." That's when I noticed them, the non-shocked faces in the crowd. His brother Kevin was recording everything on his phone with little disguised joy. His mother was wiping away phony tears with a tissue she had obviously brought beforehand. And my closest friend Melissa was standing close to the back, looking guilty and content. With nauseating clarity, the parts began to click into place. 3 months ago, around the time I informed him of the pregnancy, I began working late nights. Melissa had been asking odd questions about our marriage, our finances, and whether I had ever considered what I would do without Jeffrey. Last week, when she believed I was out of earshot, his mother said that some people simply shouldn't be mothers. I wanted something simple and private, but he insisted on having this gender reveal party. He wasn't just going to abandon me, he had intended to ruin me. Publicly, totally, to make what ought to have been one of my best days into a humiliating spectacle that would follow me for the rest of my life. My palm trembled with anger that was rapidly overpowering the shock, and the manila envelope crinkled in my hands. I could hear the murmurs beginning around me. Oh my God, did he really just during the gender reveal of their baby? It's really cruel. There was always something strange about him, in my opinion. The poor girl. Alas, poor girl. When they looked at me, they saw that. A victim. A lady so gullible and naive that she would simply stand there and accept her own husband's plan to humiliate her in public. Jeffrey continued to speak, sounding as though he were making a toast across the yard. I realize that some of you may find this strange, but Susan and I have become less close. I've come to the realization that I'm not prepared for the responsibilities of fatherhood, and it would be unfair to both of us to keep acting like I am, as if our whole marriage had been a performance. He had been acting like he had held me when I had morning sickness, rubbing my back and assuring me that everything would be all right. He had been acting much like how he had cried, really cried, when we had first heard the baby's heartbeat. The nursery we had begun designing, the property we had purchased together, and the names we had muttered to one another in the dark had all been fictitious. I could hear the rehearsed rehearsal in his tone as he went on. I've already made arrangements for Susan's immediate needs. She will receive excellent care throughout this change. A company restructuring was a transition, similar to ending our marriage. Out of the crowd, my cousin Stephen, a lawyer, came forward. It's not the right time or place, Jeffrey. Actually, Stephen, the timing couldn't be more ideal. Jeffrey's smile was cold and toothy. You see, Susan hasn't been paying attention to anything else since she has been so concentrated on making this celebration great. Important things, legal matters. My veins turned icy. What are the legal things? Stephen's tone had changed to that of an attorney. Jeffrey laughed bitterly and sharply. She presumably isn't aware, for example, that I've already frozen our joint accounts. Or that over the past 6 months I've been recording her unpredictable behavior, including her mood swings, paranoia, and her tendency to distance herself from friends and family. My jaw dropped. What are you discussing? I haven't. The way she said my mom was attempting to ruin our union. The way she has unjustly been suspicious of Melissa. The way she has been unhealthily fixated on this baby. Every phrase was a blade sharpened and targeted with precision. He wasn't simply abandoning me. I was being portrayed by him as unstable, unsuitable. He was pursuing custody. The insight struck me like a blow to the body. It wasn't that he didn't want to have children. He did this because he wanted to steer the story, manage me, keep our kid under control, make me appear like the crazy, emotional woman who couldn't be trusted with a baby, and him appear like the sensible, responsible parent. Even to my own ears, I sounded weak when I responded. You're lying. Am I? He took out his phone and swiped to what appeared to be an app for recording voice messages. I've recorded various talks. Should I play any of them? The ones in which you're yelling at me over fictitious relationships? The ones where you can't stop crying over things that never happened? My blood became as cold as ice. Those discussions had taken place, but not as he was portraying them. He had been gaslighting me for months, which made me doubt my own sanity, which is why I had been crying. He had been lying about where he spent his evenings, and I had caught him in lie after lie, so I had been upset when I discovered suspicious texts on his phone. However, I muttered, "This is crazy to anyone listening to just the audio, without context. Is it? Or is it the sound of a pregnant lady experiencing a total mental collapse? The sort of collapse that prompts a judge to wonder if she should be allowed unsupervised access to a newborn." Now the crowd was moving uneasily. A few individuals were beginning to depart, obviously no longer wanting to be involved in this. The terrible thrill of watching a car collision was shared by others. With a pallid face, my mother forced her way through the mob. Maybe we should go inside and… No, Susan, honey. I hadn't heard my own voice so shrill in months, and the word came out sharper than I had intended. Something was changing within me. Underneath the shock, which had been growing for months as I had put up with his subtle cruelties, his manipulations, and his methodical attempt to make me doubt myself, was something more difficult. No, Mother. Everyone ought to hear this, in my opinion. Jeffrey raised her eyebrows. You're creating a scene, Susan. You're supporting my claim that you're emotionally unstable. Am I? I turned to face the faces that stared at us, some openly curious, some uneasy, some sympathetic. Or have I finally stopped allowing you to drive me insane? I turned to the audience, my voice getting louder as I spoke. Let me tell you the whole story for those of you who are unaware. Jeffrey began staying late at work every night, often until 2 or 3 in the morning, after I told him I was expecting 3 months ago. Jeffrey's mouth clenched. Don't. Susan? I asked him about it, and he said I was being suspicious. When I discovered texts from M at midnight discussing our future together, he claimed it was a colleague talking about a project. With hands more steady than they had been in weeks, I took out my own phone. I screenshotted those texts, and he accused me of being a neurotic, jealous wife and breaching his privacy. Jeffrey remarked, You're having an episode, but his voice was a little unconfident. My husband began recording my panic attacks when I began to have them because he was treating me like a stranger in my own house. He did this not to help me or to understand what was wrong, but to use against me. The sound was no longer sympathetic to Jeffrey, and the crowd was now grumbling. And when I eventually recognized M, I turned to face my old best friend Melissa, who had turned as pale as paper. He wasn't simply unfaithful to me. He had an affair with my best friend, whom I had complete faith in. The woman who assisted me in organizing this celebration. Melissa opened her mouth to say something, but her words remained silent. The woman who has been inquiring about our financial situation, if I have a will, and what would happen to the child in the event that I pass away. The crowd gave a collective gasp. My mom's hand shot to her lips. Jeffrey responded, Susan, you're being ridiculous, but his tone had become tight. You're experiencing paranoia brought on by pregnancy. Am I? I felt strong for the first time in months as I turned back to him in command. If I tell you a few things I've found, you won't mind. I took out another envelope from my purse, the tiny beaded clutch I had picked out so meticulously for this evening. This one was hefty, official-looking, and sealed on the letterhead of the city's most prominent legal firm, Patterson, Wright & Associates. Jeffrey's expression darkened. What is that? I figured I'd join in on the fun because we're sharing legal documents at our baby's gender reveal. I made sure everyone could see the envelope by holding it high. I hired a private investigator 6 weeks ago, and this is from him. There was complete stillness after that. You see, Jeffrey, I am intelligent. A man who intends to divorce his pregnant wife and battle for custody doesn't just do it on the spur of the moment. He makes plans. He records. He makes a case. I moved calmly and deliberately as I broke the envelope seal, and astute enough to see that I should probably develop a case against him if someone is constructing one against me. Stephen moved between us, his face harsh, but Jeffrey surged forward as if to seize the papers. I said in a sickeningly sweet voice, Don't worry, honey. I will read only the highlights, not the entire 47 pages. I took out the top page and held it up so the photos clipped to the corner and the official letterhead could be seen from the front rows. We'll see. This is a picture of you and Melissa taken on October 15th at the Marriott downtown. You claim to have been working late on the Morrison account that evening. Melissa pushed toward the rear of the crowd, making a choked noise. This one was taken on October 23rd. November set. November 18th. I spread the pictures out like a deck of cards. It's funny how frequently the Morrison account needed to be attended to overnight at different hotels throughout the city. Jeffrey's face had turned green instead of pale. You weren't entitled to. I was perfectly entitled. I am your spouse. I have your child in my arms. And in order to take our child away from me, you have been methodically attempting to ruin my mental health. I took out a second sheet. The financial records, however, are where things start to get truly intriguing. In fact, Jeffrey stumbled backward. Jeffrey, it appears that you have been more than just unfaithful to me. I've been the victim of your theft from us, from our infant. Many of the people in the crowd were now openly staring in disbelief as I peered up at them. For those who are unaware, when my grandma and I were married, she left me a sizable trust fund. I trusted Jeffrey, so I granted him access to the account even though he was never formally added. Now the words came more easily, and every realization felt like a burden being lifted. He has been routinely moving funds from that account into a private account, one that bears Melissa's name for the last 6 months. Specifically, $67,000. Murmurs and gasps echoed through the audience. I saw folks whipping out their phones, most likely to write about this train catastrophe on social media or to call their own attorneys. According to the investigators' findings, the idea was to steal as much as possible before claiming I was mentally ill and unable of raising our child, and then filed for divorce. His new girlfriend would get to be my baby's mother, and he would receive custody and child support from my remaining assets. Jeffrey had given up all pretense of control and was now trembling. None of that can be proven by you. I can, in fact. I took out my phone and, using motions similar to his earlier ones, opened the audio recording app. You see, I've also been recording our chats. The distinction is that I legally recorded them using the appropriate paperwork and timestamps. I pressed the play button. Jeffrey's words reverberated around the yard. Since becoming pregnant, she has gone utterly crazy. She doesn't even make sense half the time. A judge will never grant custody to someone with that kind of instability. Additionally, we won't have to deal with her at all after the baby is delivered. In any case, the child will benefit more from our presence. Melissa's voice came next. Do you think we can get it to stick? What happens if she resists? How much money? She won't have enough money to hire a good attorney by the time I'm finished. Furthermore, who will believe her instead of me? I'm the steady, working one. She is the insane pregnant woman who is unable to cope with reality. Before I stopped it, the recording went on for a few more seconds, revealing their plan in horrifying detail. The ensuing hush was deep. It seems like even the evening birds had ceased their song. Jeffrey appeared on the verge of becoming ill. You can't use it, can you? Recording someone without their consent is against the law. Since just one person needs to agree to have a discussion recorded in this mode, Stephen's voice actually broke through the yard. Additionally, Susan had every legal right to record the conversations because she participated in them. For the first time in months, I felt something akin to delight as I smiled. These recordings, along with the financial evidence and documentation of your affair, will make our divorce quite easy, according to my lawyer. Yes, Jeffrey, I hired my own lawyer 3 weeks ago. With one hand on my round belly, I felt my daughter kick and move as though she approved of the situation. In addition, I have another announcement to make regarding our daughter. Yes, everyone, it's a girl. Collectively, the audience leaned forward, perhaps terrified of what lay ahead. I've previously requested exclusive use of our marital residence and a formal separation. This afternoon, the locks were changed. The cost of storing Jeffrey's possessions will be subtracted from the funds he embezzled from my trust fund. The opening and closing of Jeffrey's mouth resembled a fish struggling to breathe. In addition, I've requested emergency interim custody, pointing to verified reports of emotional abuse, infidelity, and financial deception. Next Tuesday is the hearing date. I looked across at Melissa, who was crying loudly now. You'll be pleased to hear that my lawyer will get in contact with you regarding the repayment of the money Jeffrey gave you, Melissa, given your keen interest in my family's financial circumstances. Everything. With curiosity. Now the audience was humming with a mixture of startled murmurs and what sounded almost like support and approbation. The best part, though, I added, my voice getting louder by the second, is that I'm not finished yet. Once again, I dug into my purse and took out a tiny white envelope. You see, I was preparing my future, and the future of my daughter, while you two were planning my demise. I took out a single sheet of paper from the envelope. This is Randall Wright & Associates' offer letter. Yes, the same company that employed my detective. It turns out that my capacity to collect evidence and pay attention to detail impressed them. A legal assistant position with complete benefits and a salary that surpasses Jeffrey's income at his esteemed marketing agency has been offered to me. I held up the paper, which flapped in the evening breeze. On Monday, I begin. Maternity leave in full, paid, with the assurance that should I require it, my job will be retained for a maximum of 1 year. Jeffrey was looking at me as if I had never existed before, as if the woman he had been methodically trying to dominate and destroy had suddenly changed into someone he had never seen before. Jeffrey, you see, you made a crucial error. You thought I was weak because you caused me to doubt myself. You thought you had broken me because you caused me to cry. You thought I was foolish because I liked you. My words trailed down to a whisper that mysteriously reverberated around the yard as I moved closer to him. However, loving someone who doesn't deserve it makes you human, not weak. Furthermore, you become a warrior rather than a victim when you survive someone who attempts to destroy you. Keeping eye contact, I returned his divorce papers to him. These won't be necessary for me. My attorney has already submitted a filing. Like a civilized person, you will receive proper legal service, because in contrast to you, I can feel powerful without making someone feel inferior. A mixture of astonished chatter and cheers broke out in the crowd. Now I could see phones all over the place, with individuals calling, texting, and filming to share what they had just seen. My mom showed up beside me, her eyes welling with tears. "I'm so proud of you, honey." Stephen was beaming as though he had just won the most important case of his life. That was amazing, Susan. I wasn't finished yet, though. Still loaded and waiting, I made my way to the confetti cannons, the gender reveal that had been overlooked in the flurry of retaliation and confessions. "What do you know?" My voice echoed over the talks as I yelled out. "To celebrate new life, we came here to honor optimism, to commemorate the future." I felt the weight of one of the cannons as I lifted it, and I'm going to do precisely that. I pulled the trigger after aiming the cannon into the sky. Over the mess of my previous existence, pink confetti burst across the twilight, a shower of rose-colored paper hearts and stars that fell like blessings. "It's a female." For the first time in months, my voice was filled with genuine delight as I shouted. My daughter will grow up knowing that cruelty masquerading as love is not something that women must put up with. As pink confetti fell like fairy dust on their shoulders and hair, the audience cheered, really cheered. With his divorce papers crumpled in his fist, Jeffrey stood motionless in the center of it all, coated in pink paper, his mouth still hanging open. Melissa had vanished completely, most likely fleeing to her vehicle. In an apparent attempt to disassociate themselves from the ruins of their son's reputation, his parents were hurriedly packing up their belongings. However, I had stopped viewing them. I was witnessing my mom shed joyful tears. I watched in awe as Stephen shook his head and laughed. As if they were seeing me clearly for the first time, I was observing my coworkers treat me with a newfound respect. I was looking at my future, which was bright, expansive, and full of opportunities that I had never thought of when I was little, afraid and certain that I needed someone else to complete me. I put both hands on my stomach and felt my daughter kick, strong, ferocious, and fearless, as the remainder of the confetti dropped around us. I whispered, "Welcome to the world, little one. It's going to look stunning." I left Jeffrey standing by himself in the wreckage of his ideal scheme, surrounded by pink confetti and the shattered remnants of a marriage he had ruined, and a future he had never earned. As I made my way to the house, my house now, I could hear the celebration gradually starting up again behind me. I noticed that people were remaining. They joined me in celebrating. I'm celebrating, honoring the truth that justice can occasionally resemble a pregnant woman wearing a white dress, and educating the world that the quickest way to realize someone's true power is to underestimate their strength. At the back door, I stopped and took one final glance over my shoulder. Jeffrey was still standing there, looking like a man who had played chess while his opponent was playing a totally different game, with pink confetti in his hair and divorce papers in his hand. And at last, he was discovering what it was like to lose. Grinning, I touched the door handle and crossed the threshold into my new existence. I believed that not destroying him was the best kind of retaliation. It was turning into everything he had attempted to tell me I would never be. powerful, self-sufficient, unbreakable, and utterly, totally free.